On this edition of the Table of Content, we continue our conversation, our review of MisSpelled, the fantasy series from We Are One Body Audio Theater. We'll take a look back at episode 5 and find out who the mage meets on his journey. That's coming up next, right here on the Table of Content. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Table of Content. So glad to be with you. I am Albert Sines, joined with Michael Steele. Michael, hello.
Hello, Albert. How are you?
Doing well. Glad and excited to continue through our review of MisSpelled. I hope you are as well.
Oh, same here. Absolutely.
Positively?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Positively. All right, so let's just jump into episode 5. Episode 5, we left the mage after helping a magician become Merlin, helping a prince find his fair maiden in Cinderella, and now the mage is on his journey to find Baba Yaga. And he's been apparently walking for a while, but he finds her, knocks on the door, and it's like, I was hoping that you could help me. But it's a little entertaining more than that because he wasn't expecting Baba Yaga to look the way that she does. And if you haven't looked at the way that sort of folklore depicts her, you could do an internet search. She's fairly gnarly looking from the way that she's portrayed. She's not exactly like, the good witch from The Wizard of Oz. She's probably more along the bad witch. Just as looks is concerned from the way that she's depicted. So anyways, the mage is caught off guard and they sort of get their introductions out of the way. And Baba Yaga is like, something's triggering in her memory. And then she realizes that, wait a second, the mage, she had seen the mage before. If we go back to episode 1, there was the mishap as they broke into Baba Yaga's house, the mage and the apprentice. And all we know the next thing is that the mage wakes up on the forest floor. Well, Now we get the rest of the story that Baba Yaga came home, found the mage passed out along with what she called a reptilian friend.
Right.
And she basically kind of scrapes him out of the house and dumps him and then takes off.
Right. You're the wizard with the lizard.
Right, exactly. So the mage is now really intrigued. It's like, well, what's going on? Like, what happened? So me, I was here. I'm trying to figure out who I am. And Baba Yaga's just sort of upset. She's just like, hey, you were here. You made a mess. You wrecked my ingredients. You used my ingredients. And, why in the world do I need to help you sort of with anything? But it's when the mage says that he lost his memory. He says, I'm sorry, but I don't remember any of that. I lost my memory, you see, and I'm only slowly getting it back. And so, lost your memory, huh? And she's really intrigued. No lizard, no memory. And then she's like, okay, I'll go ahead and help. After he says, and my apprentice is gone. So my apprentice is gone. She says, well, now you've got me interested. And we sort of carry on from there. And, I appreciate sort of the initial interactions between the mage and Baba Yaga because she has every right to sort of be, upset, like she found the guy in her house, wrecked her house, used her stuff, made a mess. There was a lizard running around. She's like, no, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to have anything to do with you. But as sort of similar to the mage, we find out that people are generally good people, and Baba Yaga's like, her heart sort of comes through, her compassion comes through when, she starts to realize he doesn't have a memory, doesn't know what's going on, and he lost his apprentice. So Baba Yaga shines through and says, all right, let's talk a little bit more and see if I can help you.
Yeah, it's just interesting how in fairy tales she's from Slavic folklore, and she's a supernatural being who appears usually as a deformed or ferocious looking old woman, or gnarly, as you said. I was thinking back to my Southern Californian roots when you said that.
We're not talking about waves here.
And she lives in this hut on chicken legs, right? But she's also interesting character. She's neither always a villain, or is she neither always a hero? But she sort of sides herself uh, accordingly, depending on how people treat her. And it seems like you were saying, the mage kind of annoyed her. Obviously, that's probably an understatement, by breaking and entering and using all of her stuff. But then also sort of piques her interest as to the predicament that he's now in. He says he has an apprentice, but she only saw a lizard, and he can't remember anything that's happened to him up until this point. And sort of through a series of chance encounters on his journey, it's led her up to this moment. And this is exciting because we're going to get some answers finally. What happened?
And what we come to find out, and there's no need to sort of rehash the whole thing, because basically what happens next through the majority of the rest of the story is Baba Yaga is trying to help the mage find his memory. So they're asking questions back and forth. She says, "Bring that big spell book over. This is what I found. It was open here." And they start basically trying to recreate what happened in order to jog his memory. So they go step by step. They go through every little thing. What were you doing? What did you use? And Baba Yaga says, all right, let's just try and actually redo what you were doing with the spell. So down to, I was on the table, there was a chair, and they finally sort of go through everything, and he realizes what happened. Everything comes back to him. Everything like, oh, that's right, there was an accident, and the potion, it was all over my apprentice. And also in the midst of it, he's still trying to remember what his name is. So we also find out that Baba Yaga had encountered the mage in previous encounters, and she talks basically about the mage and how he was basically this sort of pompous know-it-all who didn't want to do anything, or that she didn't want to have anything to do with. So she's, from that encounter, she's sort of able to sort of remember his name. She kind of starts talking about different variations of what she thinks his name is, and we're able to introduce his name as Septimar. So we figure out what happened. The mage has now regained his memory. He's figured out his name is Septimar, and now they've come to realize also the really big point is that the little lizard that Baba Yaga found is the dragon that has been terrorizing the kingdom over the past couple of weeks. So they realize, oh wait, that reptile was the apprentice and has become now the dragon. So we kind of cover all this throughout the majority of the story, of figuring out all of these little details that we've been waiting to find out, or that the mage has been trying to figure out over the past 4 episodes. But what I like about this sort of interaction is not only is it sort of exposition for the mage's sake, because obviously we sort of know to a certain extent what happened, but it's this opportunity of the mage's true interior coming out. Because as we've sort of been noting through the other reviews, we've had the mage being sort of grumpy and selfish, but then sort of helping people. He helped the dwarves. He gave the animals speech. He helped the magician become Merlin. He helped the prince find Cinderella. He's done these little things along the way, but he still sort of has been sort of this harder person, a harder heart. But then what do we find out through all of this is that he is remorseful. He's sorry about what he's done. And he's really actually, because they talk, there's a conversation about the apprentice. And he says, I wasn't always, mean to him. I really did like having him around, but, he basically was worried at the rate that the apprentice was learning, and that he didn't want to be the apprentice basically to surpass him. So he wanted to find the spell. And so the mage sort of becomes this really heart-filled sort of person through this entire sort of recounting what happened with, as he's been trying to recount what happened with Baba Yaga.
Right. Yeah. It's also, what I found fascinating was the whole process of Baba Yaga's trying to find out, to help him, the whole questioning conversation there, and she offers a series of questions, and he gets annoyed at one point And he says, "Why are you asking me all these questions?" And she says, "Well, I'm trying to find out what your desires were so I can sort of piece together why you were here in the first place." And I thought that it's a really neat scene of sort of kind of a Sherlock, we have to reconstruct the scene of the crime and understand motives and to help you out, but it's all in that name of helping him out. Right. And then he, like you were saying, discovers his name is Septimar. Right. So Septimar is like, probably has to do something with 7, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds right, but don't quote me on that one. But that definitely sounds right.
Mm-hmm. Which is also kind of cool. 7 is somehow has special significance, as a number. But yeah, it's interesting. And then we see his real motive for wanting that knowledge in the first place is it's out of his insecurity, maybe motivated, rooted in pride, of his apprentice sort of eclipsing him. The student has now become the master type of thing, and having to be ahead, or feeling like he had to be more powerful, better informed, more enlightened, etc., etc.
It's, I was thinking about what you said. You said about the questions she was asking of him to try to deduce the desires that he had, and sort of that opportunity for sort of self-exploration, right? And I can't say I've ever been to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I think they ask a lot of questions, right? Because they're trying to get to the root of the matter. And they was like, okay, well, let's ask you some questions. Let's try to open this up. Let's figure out what's going on. Yeah. And in doing so, right, even though the mage was probably self-aware of it, he never really thought about it because no one's ever asked him about it. But in that moment that we are sort of presented from, like, someone asks you the question, right? So for example, if you know you're rude or you're mean, but you never sort of ask yourself about it, but then when someone asks you and says, "Hey, why are you mean?" Suddenly right. You're sort of caught off guard. You're like, well, I'm not sure, or I think it's because of this, and you're able to sort of dig out from the person, right? So Baba Yaga's, sort of digging at, well, what do you love? What are the things that you desire? What do you want? And this sort of, you start to see the mage, say, well, no, I'm not interested in that. Well, yeah, I am interested in that. That would be great. He even has a joke. He says something about those little apple tarts. It's like, oh, okay, great. So he likes apple tarts. But the point being is that when you have this moment of sort of self-revelation between you and another person who's trying to ask questions from you, it can be a very sort of eye-opening experience.
Mm-hmm. Right. I was just reading the text here, and they get into a little spat afterwards about that, because Baba Yaga precisely calls him out on, you're old enough to know better than to try to shortcut your way to wisdom and knowledge. And he takes offense at that. Right. And then they basically like, okay, well then just get out of my house, she says. And he's like, with pleasure, like, fine, I'm going to take my toys and go home. But it is true. There's that sense that, and I don't know if that's, again, like you were saying, in the world of psychology, if this is actual part of the process of growing in self-knowledge, where you have to have kind of that shattering moment of self-realization, like, oh, I'm not as perfect as I thought I was, and then healing can happen once there's a coming to grips with or understanding, of whatever imperfection comes to light. In this case with Septimar, just like he was jealous, or insecure about his ability to be a mage.
So from here, as you said, Septim was about to leave because he was very insulting to Baba Yaga because she didn't give any sort of credence to his reasoning. Because he was like, "Well, how else am I supposed to learn?" And
Right.
calls her a name and says, "Well, get out of my house." He's like, "Okay, fine," but
Yeah.
then they are approached now by the dragon. The dragon has now come to find them, and
Mm.
they basically have to escape. And Baba Yaga has this really entertaining scene. So it's really fun because you have what basically I would describe as like an arcade controller that sort of comes out of the ground or out of the bottom of the house, and she wants to control it. And Septimar says, "Well, you don't just move it directly by magic." And Baba Yaga says, "This is hardly the time, but this was easier. The controls are magically connected to the chicken legs. Now hang on." So I imagine sort of being, you're standing at the arcade device and you're controlling your chicken leg house.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Like the joystick with the big red
exactly,
knob
right.
on
The
it.
big red knob and the big buttons, and you just sort of pound really hard.
Yeah.
You know,
It's so great.
it's like Mario Brothers for Fantasy World or something.
Right. Right.
So they escape the dragon, and now the mage has sort of realized, right? The mage is coming to the mage and Baba Yaga are both realizing this is intense, this is extreme. The dragon's a danger.
Yeah.
The mage is like, I've got to do something to help make this right. And so they have a conversation. Says, all right, if I'm going to help you win the dragon and get your apprentice back, I'm going to need certain spells, and I'm going to need a specific ingredient, and
Mm.
it's only found in Giant Country. The mage is like, look, I've really got to help. And we have this moment really where the mage's heart sort of opens up about his apprentice. And he says, and I wasn't always nasty to him. I really enjoyed his company in the beginning,
Yeah.
but, and that's where he really talks about how, the apprentice was starting to surpass him, and he was afraid. And, Baba Yaga interjects that he'd become a better mage and a better person than you. And Septimar sort of admits, he's like, yeah, that was not my finest hour. That was not my greatest act. But then Baba Yaga says, you really do love him, don't you? Maybe you should stay here after all. You might get a chance to tell him that. And Septimar is like, no, I have to get that potion. I have to make this right. It's the only way he'll believe me, even if I do get the chance to say all that to him. And so he's like, now it's upon him. It is on him to figure this out, to make amends. Like, I have to go to Giant Country. I have to get the potion. I have got to make this right.
Right.
And in those moments, right, we're sort of given, we're encouraged. When we realize everything finally in front of us, when we realize everything that we have to do, then we're sort of given the strength to sort of step out and make the right decision. And that's what we're seeing the mage do here.
Yeah, right. He's taking a good look at his actions and his motives, honestly, sincerely, and he's holding himself responsible for it, which is really refreshing. Like you were saying, up until this point, we've experienced this kind of rough around the edges character, and now, like you were saying, we're seeing sort of a vulnerable side to him, and this is, I feel, could be a turning point in his person and how the rest of the story plays out. He wants to make things right. So, and that's the cool thing about it, is that he's not just, okay, yeah, I've been bad, and then just leaves it at that. He's like, no, I've been bad, and I want to fix it. I want to make it right, even though I have to go on this side quest. It's not going to be an easy thing to do, but like you were saying, in order to restore the relationship with the apprentice, I want to do this. Yeah, it's really cool.
And I think, as some people say, right, they say most people are generally good people.
Yeah.
Even if someone appears that they're a mean person or a bad person, most people, though, are inclined to do something that is right or do something that is good, especially if they're given sort of the right motivation. If only all people would just sort of as common task, do the right thing.
Mm,
But be that as it may, with proper sort of inspiration and motivation, people will step up to the plate and they'll respond the way the mage did.
right. Right. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting how in this point of the story, they're being chased by the dragon. Like the house is like running, like we're talking about those controls, and they're having this moment. I believe if I'm reading the story correctly, they're being chased by they're in peril of by the dragon.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, they are definitely, there is much peril. You're right.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. That sort of adds to the suspense of the moment, and also sort of like the vulnerability of the mage. That's really cool.
So the mage accepts his task to go find the potion from Giant Country, and Baba Yaga encourages him to be quick. Time is of the essence. So he heads off on his next part of his journey. Now with his name and his memory restored, Septimar heads out to track down the potion, which we will discover more of in episode 6. But we bring episode 5 to a close now, sort of with the direction of heading towards the closing of this series. But still more. There's still more adventure to come, and there's more for the mage to learn, and for also the introduction of other characters still that have their own learning and growth to take part in. But Michael, as always, I thank you for joining us in this review.
Oh, thank you, Albert. This has been a very satisfying episode in that, like you were saying, we get to have some of the knots that have been tied start to be untied. So, but like you were saying, there's still more to go. I still have so many questions. Where are we going with the story? But this has been great. Like you were saying, Septimar is his name, and now we know why they were at the front step in episode 1 of the chicken house in the first place. So yeah, a very great episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us as we have continued our review of the MisSpelled series. We hope that you will continue to follow along, not only in our reviews, but of the story itself. So until the next time, until the next episode, be good, stay safe, peace.